kind of hard to see, but it's like that one island there, and they have no island. I should say it's spelled Islay, but it's pronounced Isla malts. And they have a minimum of 7 distilleries there. Most of them pretty famous, so it gets its own region. And each of the different regions have their own characteristics. So if there's nothing that you sort of like, if you come away with understanding what roughly is the taste of each of those different regions, so whenever anyone offers you a whiskey, you can look and see what region it's from, and you'll get a general idea of what its characteristic will be. Because usually the characteristic stays with the region. So the process of Scotch I have here, but so I'll just quickly go through it. So there's not much to it. There's only 3 main ingredients: water and barley and yeast. So we take barley, soak it. It's allowed to germinate. Usually we do this in big concrete floors in these old distilleries, and then guys with shovels would go along and turn it as it dried out. And then you do the malting process. So you moisten the grain now that it's been germinated, and once it's sufficiently got enough starches to be created, there's some sort of chemical processes going on, then you have to dry it. And that's where one of the first major flavour characteristics is going to be introduced, which is how you dry it. So the stuff in the lowlands, it's going to probably be dried without any peat. And peat is one of the things that gives Scotch one of its major tastes, and it introduces a lot of peat or peat smoke to it. Peat is vegetation that's been broken down after 10,000 years. It lives in bogs. You go in there and you can cut it out with a damp shovel, and it's sodden with water. So you have to once you cut it, you have to lay it out to dry, and then once it's dried, you can use that to dry off your barley. And when you dry off the barley, the amount of peat that you use peat to dry, you use hot air or you use an oven or whatever you want to use to dry it off. But a lot of people at that stage use peat to dry it, and that's when they introduce the smoke and the peat to it. And if ever you get around some barley that's been malted like that, you can actually run your hands over the barley and then smell your hand, and you'll smell the smoke, the peat smoke on your hand.
So like a more pungent wood smoke, right?
Right. Then you grind it into this sort of rough flour, and then you add a lot of water to it. That's the mashing part of it. Starches turn into sugars. It ferments, probably only for like 3 days. You add 10,000 gallons of water per vat. That's why you need so much water. And then you'll find every distillery is right beside a very abundant water source. And then people will say, well, the reason our whiskey tastes the way it does is because of the water that we add. It's not tap water, it's taken straight from the stream, so they say the stream has picked up these inferences, and the French equivalent from wine would be terroir, so it's the same thing. So then once you have the wort, that's pretty much the same as like the process of getting to beer, and then that's where you distill. So Scotch whisky is distilled twice, with the exception of the only one that's triple distilled is Auchentoshan. Again, this is a lowland malt. It's a kind of easier, very accessible malt, and they say that's because the lowlands near to England, and the English tastes are